We looked at the COVID-19 pandemic as an opportunity for us to supply the Morristown community with quality pastas and sauces that they could cook at home to have a beautiful family experience without having to leave their homes. My name is AJ Sankofa and I'm the founder and owner of ESO Artisanal Pasta. My journey starts out in Manhattan, actually. I was born in New York and I moved around a lot as a kid. Spent 7 years in Charlotte, North Carolina, and eventually came up to Morristown when I was 13 years old. That's where I've been ever since. I started working in restaurants when I was 17 years old. I really just dove headfirst into the restaurant scene as a busboy and worked my way up through the ranks. I was going to Fairleigh Dickinson University full-time and working in the front of house as a server full-time at Jockey Hollow when I decided that I was going to drop out and pursue restaurants. So when I dropped out, I started working 3 or 4 shifts a week in the back of house in the kitchen and the rest of the time in the front of house as a server. So I was working around 80, 85 hours a week, really dedicating myself to the craft. I told myself that because I was working in an Italian restaurant under an Italian chef, Chef Kevin Sipple, that I wanted to really go in Italy and master my craft the same way that they did. I was looking for schools for maybe 2 weeks, and I found this one school called the Italian Culinary Institute for Foreigners in Piemonte, Italy. One day during lunch service, I went to Chef Kevin and showed him the school on my phone, and he ended up pulling out a picture of his graduation photo from that same school in 1998, a year after I was born. From that moment, it was kind of set in stone. I knew that this was the path that I had to follow. 6 months after that, I packed my things up and I headed out to Italy for the first time and ended up getting my master's degree from that school. When I came back from Italy the second time, I started working in Manhattan at Legacy Records, where I ended up meeting my now wife, Cristina Gambarian. The pandemic hit in March of 2020 and we were both out of a job. At that moment, I knew that I didn't want to leave Cristina in Brooklyn and the apartment that we were living in at that time, so I asked her to come back to Morristown and stay with me. Cristina and I stayed on the couch for about a month, just really enjoying the time off. And it was great, it was awesome. Eventually though, we started to get bored and we both knew that we had a calling for cooking and we wanted to keep moving forward with our careers in some way. So we came up with the concept of starting Babushka's Pies, which was a cake and pie delivery service. Cristina would bake all her nice, beautifully done baked goods and I would deliver them. That was really the foreground for ESO. Having a small business, running it, just her and I, learning how to do the marketing, and then the thought crossed our minds. If we could do it with Babushka's Pies, why not with pasta? We looked at the COVID-19 pandemic as an opportunity for us to supply the Morristown community with quality pastas and sauces that they could cook at home to have a beautiful family experience. And I think that that is what really helped us become successful and become a staple in the community for the food scene.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye-bye.
So we started ESO in May of 2020 and we ended up opening actually the 1st of July. We had 2 months to kind of put this whole thing together and it really just felt like dominoes. We were going to model ESO right after Babushka's Pies, meaning that it was going to be a delivery service. And Andrea from the Artist Bakery reached out to us, I think 2 weeks before we were set to open and said, hey, I'm not using my dining room because of COVID. Do you guys want to use the space as your storefront? And the whole thing just kind of took off from there. We went from having a delivery service to having an actual store here in Morristown where I grew up, where I went to high school, where I graduated, where all my friends and family are. Opening day, we were crazy busy, just like we were for the grand opening of this space that we're in now. And from there on, I realized that this community was special and that we had a calling to do what we're doing. When we opened ESO, we started with just selling pastas and sauces for people to prepare at home. Over the course of a couple of months, we started adding small things like olive oils and vinegars that were sourced from Seasons, and eventually pizza that was sourced from Luna Pizza, which is a pizza place down in Flemington, New Jersey. The cool thing about Luna Pizza is they are the ones that got us the connection to be able to use the best quality Italian flour that we could get our hands on in the States. After that, the biggest push that we had was doing takeout out of the Artist Baker, where I was actually cooking and Cristina was acting as the server for our operation there. And the biggest pivot we've had since then was opening our new space here at 92A Elm Street, where we're doing pastas, sauces, pizzas, and pastries all together in one spot, as well as imported Italian goods. Operating during the coronavirus brought about a lot of challenges. So in the beginning of this business, if you wanted to get our pastas and sauces, you had to pre-order via Instagram. That quickly got us really backed up as we took a lot more orders and invoices than we could really handle. We were only open 3 days a week, so we spent those 3 days for about the first month that the business was open making pasta to order in the shop and spending all the time that the shop wasn't open making pastas and sauces just to try to keep up with the demand as best we could. I think one of the biggest challenges for chefs all over the world throughout the pandemic was the gloves and the masks required at all times. Going from a place where you kind of had a choice to being forced to always have them on, it's tough, especially when you're doing something like me where you're making pasta and you really need to feel the dough and the condition that it's in and the humidity, etc. And then the masks too, when it comes to like tasting the sauces that you're making or tasting a dish that you just put up that you're thinking of putting on the menu. It was tough, you know, you adjust, you adapt, and you learn what works, but I think that kind of came off eventually as like a nuisance for everybody that's in this industry. But safety first, so we got through it. Through the pandemic, I truly realized just how amazing of a community I live in. And when I say community, I really mean Morristown, the Morristown community. I've seen so much support from the parents of students I went to high school with, to my own next door neighbors, to old teachers that I used to have, to members of the firefighter team and police force that have come into this place that we opened and supported us, not only because they wanted to have a meal that was special and that was good and that had quality flavors and ingredients, but because they saw a young kid who had a dream and they wanted to help make that dream a reality.